So this past week, a resident died during one of my shifts. If you work in residential aged care, working among the dead and the dying, it's hardly uncommon that someone dies. But what is rare is that deaths that happen on site usually happen during the day. Usually people die in the early hours of the morning or at hospital after leaving the facility, when the aged care centre's care is beyond the scope of the nursing staff. Part of our role in chaplaincy is to be with the dead and their families once they've passed. And I still remember sitting with the first dead person. It was a couple of years ago. Most chaplains say that they remember their first time as well. This guy, I'll call him Aaron. He died from liver disease. He had a life supported by alcohol, and it made death really difficult and, dare I say, ugly. And the truth is, I was there because Aaron's brother wanted somebody there while he ran out to make some phone calls and run some errands. Aaron's brother was so kind and soul of the earth kind of guy who was Aaron's carer for a time before the rest of the family, like when the rest of the family couldn't look after him. I still remember the stillness of being in the room with Aaron once he passed. But nearly 2 years into my job and many more deaths, that stillness of a body no longer animated by breath or pain or distress now holds a sacredness that's hard to describe. Sometimes pastoral care workers, priests, chaplains are asked to fill that empty space with a prayer, something the deceased may have asked for in their end-of-life plan. Often, though, the space is filled with cries or talking and chatter, or maybe even relief from those who have sat by their side in their last hours and are now faced with the loss and whatever's next. This is all unavoidable. All created things have a beginning and an end. So interestingly, also this last week, I was asked to speak at a business person's breakfast. So when I'm not working in end-of-life care, I'm researching and teaching at my local university's business school. And so the invite to speak at this breakfast came on account of some social posts around my up-and-coming book, Descent to Everything. And Mike, the guy who organises the breakfast, gave me free rein to speak on whatever I wanted, but said it would be helpful to discuss some of the findings from my doctoral studies on small business. I decided to talk about death. Not because death was part of my chaplaincy work, but because it's part of all created life, including business life. So I threw a few slides up on the big screen and I showed all the attendees theory-based diagrams of business seasons and life cycles or product life cycles. And I followed them up with several slides showing diagrams of the seasons of life and cycles of a person's lifespan and their socio, spiritual growth. Now, I reckon a monkey could have picked the similarities between these charts, the life cycle of an organization and the life cycle of a person. So aside from a couple titles and labels, the lines, the curves, the flow, they all looked the same. They started zero, they went to learning and launch stage, they entered growth, they got to maturity where they plateaued, and then there's this decline and exits of sorts. I threw in a few lighthearted jokes and stories, but the evidence is clear. And here it is. One day, we will die. One day, Microsoft, Apple, Ford, and every large, medium, small business is going to end. It dies. Now, if death is guaranteed and unavoidable, then I'm asking, what would wisdom do differently now? The answer to that question rarely comes easy, I've found, because very few people talk about death and the end of things. Ernest Becker wrote this Pulitzer Prize winning book in 1974 called The Denial of Death. It's fantastic. And as he says in the book, we in the West don't like to talk about or be near death. Now, I've got a whole chapter on decentering death in my new book. Suffice to say that we in the West just often lack basic wisdom and discernment when it comes to the decline of things, including businesses that we work and manage, and it seems that a lot of business people are simply unwilling to face the unavoidable truth that their enterprise, big or small, are in a season of decline, or simply failed to make it to maturity. There was a recent national study in Australia that was published in a government, it's a free booklet called Small Business Matters. A lot of research went around Australia looking at small businesses, and small businesses, around 43% failed to make a profit in 2023, and 75% of all small business owners take home less than the average wage. Now, there's lots of reasons to start and buy and manage a business, but for everyone who does it, they'll tell you that it can be tough going. The statistics indicate that 1 in 4 small business owners earn more than an average wage from their efforts. Now, am I suggesting that all the strugglers should call it a day? No. Nor do I think that profitable owners should sell up. What I'm suggesting, and what I suggested to the listeners at the breakfast, is that we must have necessary and honest discussions about the season a business is in and the season we are personally in. So after the breakfast talk, this lovely lady comes up to me and she tells me she works as a business broker, and she shares how many small business owners, mainly boomers who were born between 46 and 64, who've done really well with their small businesses and are now tired and wanting to retire. She's like, these people need to hear you talk. She went on to tell me that these people all had houses and boats and toys, but couldn't come to grips with exiting or selling their businesses. I'm not surprised. The social research around the boomer generation, who are now retiring and getting tired and also beginning to die off, a lot of them have attached a great deal of identity from their economic success. Again, I cover all the whys in the book, but many boomers attribute their success to their own smarts instead of, to be honest, complex, favorable external forces around them that made their success possible. Political forces, economic forces, social forces, technological forces, etc. Here are my thoughts, my honest thoughts, popular or not. I think these people should sell their businesses, their functional businesses, at a reasonable price to the next generation and spend their remaining days giving back as volunteers, grandparents, carers, etc. Firstly, they should give back to the communities that fostered their wealth. And secondly, they should give back to the younger generation whose taxes will be funding their pensions. Sure, enjoy the fruits of your labor, but for goodness sake, you have to divest of yourself and belongings. If you do it, all the research shows everyone will be happier for it. Generative, voluntary, divesting people in the later stages of their life, in the winter stages of their life, are a lot happier. Back to chaplaincy for a moment. You may not be surprised to hear that very few people who come into a 24-hour care, residential aged care facility are willing to discuss their end-of-life wishes. I mean, this is literally the last stop after a long life, and so many of them just can't come around to talking about the end. What do you want to happen when you die? However, those who have come to accept where they are and what is coming speak about it with sobriety and, dare I say, a sense of gratitude that makes them a real delight to care for and be around. These older persons are oftentimes practiced in what I coined in the new book, decentric eldering. To wrap it up, it would seem that a possible combination of immaturity, denial, naivety, and an inability to grieve well has robbed many of us from accepting that all things must end. And I think this is a great loss and a symptom of the era we find ourselves in. Humans living longer with more stuff than ever before at the world's and future's expense. We pathologize grief like it's a bad thing. We shame people who quit and give up. We idolize health and wealth. We believe the lie that life is going to be this endless summer. We refuse to grow up and then grow down. I've got to go, so I'll close with this question. What necessary conversations are you avoiding that you need to be having around the end of things?